Hello YouTube viewers, welcome to my channel Science to Technology. In today's show, Camera Tuesday, we're going to talk about Fujifilm X-T5. So let's dive deep into it. So this puppy was announced in mid of 2023. It should be easily available now. Here's the deal. What is this? Well, it is a mid-range APS-C camera. This puppy is not medium format. Fuji has a two lineup, X lineup for APS-C and the GG lineup for medium format, Pro lineup basically. So this is a mid-range camera. Now, what's the selling point of this puppy? Well, it's 40 megapixel. Now, be mindful. You may be like, hey, we have 60 megapixel in full frame. That is still low density compared to this. This size, 40 megapixel in that size is bonkers high resolution. There are only few sensors that are in that category. So it's one of the highest resolution that you can just give money and buy right now in APS-C. So it's going that for it, and it's $1,700 in world, and in India when I'm making this video it's showing price in Amazon 1,69,000. Now be mindful, it's available in bit of discount as of now, so you should be able to get it for a bit cheaper. Why the heck anybody should care? Well, it has megapixel, plus it has a very advanced SoC. Fujifilm develops a SoC, releases it with their flagship, and then it trickles it down. So the X processor 5 is now trickling down. So that puppy has deep learning AI. Now like, wait a minute. Why the heck a camera needs AI? Well, without AI, you can do autofocus, but you cannot do what we classify as predictive autofocus, meaning where the heck character would be. Like, it is such a complex task that not only Canon and Sony, both of them invested boatload of money in AI. Heck, Sony has a physically third chip, like there is a third IC whose sole job is just to do prediction calculation. Because you can try to hunt for autofocus, that's awesome, but if you want to increase your frame rate and you want to have hit rate where it's like, no, I'm actually gonna hit all the photos in focus, you need guessing ability. You cannot guess something if it's random. For that reason you need AI. So AI will not only study what the heck is going on, it will filter out which subject algorithm to utilize. Oh, it's a motor sports, is it bike, is it car, is it train, is it bird? It will need to go through all of that, then apply the focus based on, and then guess an algorithm which suits it well, and then hits the focus. So it does need AI. Now here's the deal. Does that mean it will always be the best? Hell no, many cameras have this at this point in time. But it does mean that from compared to, let's say, Fuji X-T3, X-T4, this will give you a bit more edge in terms of basically how many photographs are in focus and useful focus. It would be higher. Another thing is, they are also saying that they have worked very hard to make sure that white balance is also very accurate utilizing this puppy. Now, like, wait a minute, is white balance that difficult? Not difficult. The problem with white balance is that it's subjective. Meaning, if you take the raw file, you can change the white balance afterwards. That's not an issue. But while you're taking it, the JPEG engine has to guess it precisely. Otherwise, the film could look off. Otherwise, the images would look dull. Just with white balance, just right, getting it just right. And because Fuji is known for their colors, given the fact that they used to make for 100 years negatives and all that jazz, so there's a bit of expectation. So they are using AI not only for basically autofocus filtering, and it also doing for white balance. So which means your yield rate in photographs that are just out of the body JPEGs that are useful, that is like, you know what, this is pleasant, that should be higher. It will give you the full manual feel. Now this camera knows how to feel manual compared to the Nikon's attempt recently, but again, it's kind of expected given the fact that that's their whole lineup. Their whole lineup is like, we are making a retro camera. So they are much better at it compared to any other brand. So X-T5. So what are the feature set of this puppy? Well, dual UHS-2 card slots, meaning it can be used professionally, and somebody hated Fuji and they just inserted Sony SD card in Fuji camera. I'm like, that's just mean. But they did that. Now, brand new SoC, that's the whole point why you should buy this. It's like, that will be the biggest edge that you're gonna get. Now, it has three-way tilting LCD, and I'm like, why? Like, why? It's one of those things. It's like, why? The world has accepted that flip out screen is the best. Whether you like it or not, it's the best, because it also has the amazing ability to fold and safeguard the LCD, meaning you can close it and your LCD is safe, and you have electronic viewfinder. You may not even need to open that puppy. Many people love that fact. Videographers love the fact, and there are more angles that puppy can reach. So why are you forcing a weird angle screen here? It's like half of the time they're like, we want to, we did it in different models, and then they're like, what if we don't in this model? So that just rubs me the wrong way. It's like, just accept it. Just simplify the production lineup and just like, this is it, done, go home. But it is what it is. It does have pixel shift because of the SoC. It does have the pixel shift, and given with the idiotically huge megapixel, you can go up to 160 megapixel super resolution. Now, be very mindful, be very thorough. You're not gonna get 160 megapixel image. Why? There is very few lenses that can resolve that kind of power, and then the lenses that can physically resolve it, those are used in telescope, and those lenses take years to grind. So yeah, you ain't getting that sort of lenses. So, and be mindful, entry aperture to have that level of magnification, like that level of what you call resolution power, yeah, it would be huge. So there's a law of physics, you need large entry aperture to get that. So this sort of, what does this mean here? This means if you're basically there is a loss of data. Let's say this scene has 1 gigapixel of data. Your lens will throw away, let's say 80% of it. Your sensor will throw away far more of it. So you have 2 steps of loss. When you use this sort of pixel shift technology, you reach a point where you are reaching almost what a sensor can, basically what lens can throw. So you are removing the bottleneck of the sensor itself. So if you put a very sharp lens with this puppy, you're gonna get whoa image. But if you have a crappy lens, do not expect it to be like whoa. It will be like, okay. So be realistic with that. It will give you the file size, it will give you better resolution, but it's not true. It has in IBUS, which Fuji is very well known for it. It has 15 FPS burst, meaning you can go with this. But be mindful, the buffer, to keep the cost down, the buffer is very lightweight. That puppy fills up in basically 20 raw files, and given the fact the raw files are huge because you have 40 megapixel, it's understandable. But if you are in JPEG mode, you can go for 30 seconds. So there are some pros and cons. That 20 ROMs means you have to be cautious. If you are doing sports photography of your children and all that, you have to be a bit cautious with it. You have to like you cannot go okay, now I'm waiting to clear it out, because it does not have C fast express, so it's not going to dump all the data into memory very quickly. So be realistic. In terms of video, this puppy can go up to 10 bits, H.265 and 422, no crop, 4K 60 FPS. There is like a bit of issue with cropping and all that, but like almost no crop, let's just put it that way. You can do 6.2K raw output through HDMI if you need to, but that puppy has crop. If you go into any modes that have 6K, yeah, it has brutal crop. How brutal? You're gonna be falling down to almost micro four third sensor. So yeah, you have to be mindful. And I do hate the fact that they went back to micro HDMI. In this regard, I do like Sony's approach, where they're like, once they sort something out, they do not roll back on it. It's like, okay, we figured it out how to inject a full-size HDMI in our cameras. Most of their cameras will have full-size HDMI camera. Only few of them which like physically cannot fit it. Here they're like, dude, one step left to this your lineup, you already have figured it out. Why? I get it. They're trying way too hard to differentiate. So these are the features of it. It's a good, well-rounded body on paper. So what about the performance? Well, performance, this is where it's interesting. Because of the megapixel, you're gonna get good colors and good details. If you have a good lens, you're gonna have a really pleasant time. But be mindful, it's a cheaper camera body, so it does not have what we classify as stacked sensor. So readout is slow, very slow. What does that mean? That simply means you have to deal with bad rolling shutter. Do not, even in still mode, if you are in an electronic shutter and you go, it's gonna be like, all things should be like, whee. So be very mindful of that. It's not a fast action camera. Heck, Fuji has a different sensor that is same megapixel but stacked. It can do fast, and Fuji will say the same thing to you. It's like, hey, you need action, go buy that camera. This is not for it. So be realistic with your expectation in that regard. And let's not even go into rolling shutter of the video, because it will remind you of the good old days of A6000, Sony A6000. It's bad. Let's just put it that way, it's bad. Now, it's really useful, like if you're doing something like what I am doing, or you're doing interview kind of thing, this is like shut up, take money, more than good enough. But if you are vlogging or doing anything that requires a lot of motion, yeah, you may be like, so keep your expectation in check. You are basically paying for the good colors, good details, and autofocus. Now, this is one thing you have to understand. Fuji was trying to catch up to the autofocus of giant of Canon, and Sony was also doing it. But Sony had the advantage that they were coming from electronic news gathering ecosystem, meaning news cameras. They were good and they had huge handycam lineup, so they knew autofocus. So Fuji, in the early days, they were trying to make camera lenses that are quote unquote digital but felt analog. Consequence, those lenses are, while very good, has characteristic, feel and all that, they're not fast. Meaning your body can be like, hey, focus on there. The lens would be like, yeah, I'm going there, man. Chill, chill. I'm going there. So even though this can go 15 frame per second, even though the computer inside can figure out like where I have to move the lens physically to get the right shot, the lens, older lens specifically, would be like, you will be, many times you will miss shots, not because the camera could not keep up, it's simply because your lens physically could not move fast enough. So be mindful, especially with Fuji, because of a lot of their older lenses that are released, let's say in 2000s and 2010, from 2010 plus era, those are very low price now. So be mindful. You can buy them, it will still work, everything is fine, but be mindful of that. Your autofocus won't be like, whoa. Be mindful of that. So you need modern lenses to get wow autofocus. Display and electronic viewfinder. Now in this, I personally hate all camera companies. It's like, especially Sony, given the fact that they have a division that makes mobile phones, that makes tiny screens, and they were the first company to make freaking 4K high brightness display. I'm like, why the heck they have such horrible display? Like same way. And if you ever wondered why the heck we count basically display, like this physical display in pixels, and why the heck we count in dots, dots is a bigger number, because if this is 4K, you can multiply it by 3 of them, basically it's a OLED, so it has a red, blue, green. Some have red, blue, green, yellow, some have red, blue, green, white. So you can multiply that with that number and you're like, million dots. No, no. If you say the actual pixel, like what is the length and width, it's barely HD. So that's why all displays, all Sony, Nikon, Canon, and Panasonic, all other than DJI and basically action camera companies, they understood it's like you should be able to look good. All these camera companies are garbage, and this is cost cut down variant, so it's not even very bright. So that does suck. So mediocre at best. Electronic viewfinder, mediocre at best. Now battery, thankfully they have good battery, Ep259 battery, which means it's gonna be good for real use. You can keep using it and this puppy will last long enough, including USB-C charging. So good puppy. So for whom this camera is? Well, let's be very clear. This is a camera specifically targeted. This is a very niche camera for photographic enthusiasts. Meaning, if you live and breathe photography, you're like, hey, I do my job, I'm having fun and all that jazz, but I want to have a hobby where I do photography and I want to enjoy that action itself. This is perfect for you. This is not made for like press photographer or an action photographer. It's not that kind of tool. Fuji has different cameras for those ecosystem. This is a different kind of. This is more of like, hey, I'm well off financially speaking, and I'm like, I have a camera, I travel around, and I like take some photography. I enjoy myself with the photography hobby itself. Shut up, take money. You're gonna have a very pleasant time with this. But if you are like, let's say, wedding photographer, where you have a like, you know, a very solid planned out timeline where it's like, I'm going to take the photo, I'm going to process the raw, this is the feeling I'm going to give, this is the ecosystem I'm going to, not made for that, not made for that. So be mindful of that. Now, if you are in that category where it's like, hey, I want to just have fun with this camera, be mindful. Please select your lens very carefully. Try to narrow down the lens list based on the launch event, when it was launched, which year it was launched. If it was launched way too long ago, try avoiding it. Because again, you will be like, hey, I'm getting like, you know, 40 megapixel, it will be like 40 megapixel of a mobile phone if the lens is not sharp enough. So it's one of those things. And if you're like, hey, I want video, do not look into this, because trust me, you're going to learn the hard way why the heck we work so hard to reduce rolling shutter. Look into a 6700, similar sort of price ranges, and you will find that puppy to be far more robust in video use. Now, do not expect speed and lack of vertical battery grip also shows me that Fuji themselves are not very serious with this in terms of pro use, because Fuji is one of the few companies that knows how to make battery grip. I'm like, wait a minute, don't all camera companies have that? Yeah, all of them have bad designs. What this company did is clever. It's like, what if, hear me out, like let the science go far. What if you have battery contacts at the bottom? What if you let the battery in the bottle and you just plonk on something different? It's like, wow. What if you put 2 batteries in there? What if that means when you're using it, you have 3 batteries, 3 times, and you can swap the battery packages if you want to. You never have to worry about anything. Imagine Fuji has that sort of technology. and they're like, yeah, let's not put into this, and they cannot add afterwards. Let that be very clear, because of the design, it does need that bottom electrical contacts. It's not there in this model. So I'm pretty sure this camera is not targeted for those sort of serious heavy workload kind of environment. And again, Fuji's marketing of this and selections of a feature set, it does quantify that sort of ecosystem. Whereas like, I want to enjoy photography, I want to learn photography, I have like, you know, enough wealth to satisfy that curiosity, this would be far more suited for those sort of ecosystem. Can it do video? Absolutely, it can do video. Can you have like, you know, your good holiday pics with this, good holiday videos with it? Absolutely. But would you, I recommend this to be like, you know, your camera that does all of that? Hell no. No. Heck, even Fuji themselves have a better ecosystem, better camera that is far more quote unquote hybrid. This is like, enjoy the camera, man. You will get the benefit of Fuji ecosystem is that out of the camera JPEGs are genuinely good, and this also supports HIF format. So the new format that was I think, if I'm not mistaken, the first major company that introduced to it was Apple. It's a 10-bit format. It does have a bit more latitude in color. You can even move white balance and all that. It does not have full raw ability, but it is good. So this also supports that. So for those sort of ecosystem people, it's a very perfect tool, but do not expect it for like work tool. Fuji themselves have like different tools that are tailor-made for that ecosystem. This is not for it. So this was my presentation on Fuji X-T5. Hopefully you have liked it, learned from it. In that case, please click the like button, share it amongst your friends. That will help me a lot. If you didn't like it, didn't enjoy it, I urge you to press dislike. Press it twice to show me extra disappointment. Please leave a comment because I do try to reply to all of them. Subscribe, press the bell icon if you're free. And as always, thanks for watching.